exactly what we do, right? That's all we're simply doing is positioning you to look like a VIP borrower. Again, you could have a home address, you could have a non-professional email and still get approved for non-bankable or what we call immediate financing options like 0% cards. We not only want to set you up for the highest limit approvals possible on the 0% side, we also want to start setting you up so that your business can actually get approved for real business funding.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. So today we're going to talk about why most business funding advice is dead wrong and what you can do about it and what actually works. So I have a special guest today, Mr. Patrick Pychynski, and of Stacking Capital. And so let me read you a little bit, tell you a little. I'm reading it, so just so y'all know, I'm not fronting. So about his background. So from a U.S. Marine, thank you for his service, to an 8-figure business funding expert. Patrick is the go-to expert for entrepreneurs who want to unlock massive zero-interest funding without drowning in high-interest rate debt. He helps establish business owners secure $50,000 to $500,000 in funding so they can scale without risking their financial ruin. And so, after discovering untapped credit opportunities during the pandemic, he invested over $50,000 mastering the funding game. And one of the things, Patrick, we teach, your number one asset is you, right? So you have to invest in between your two ears because money comes from specialized knowledge and solving problems. Income is a result of solving other people's problems. And so that's what you master. See, success, these clues we teach. And I just want to point out right from the jump, he invested in himself, that generated the revenue. So tell him, we're going to talk about the 3 C's framework that helped secure over $14 million in funding for 200 plus business owners. And his unique approach, I love this, combines Marine Corps discipline with relationship banking to get entrepreneurs funded as little as 14 days. Patrick, my brother, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Curtis. Hey, and before I just dive into all that business credit stuff, I really just want to take a moment to acknowledge you, the way you challenge people to think differently about money. I know we had a little conversation before this. You're actually really empowering them and giving them a good education here. So if for anybody listening right now, if you're not subscribed or anything, just make sure to drop Curtis a 5-star review and like this podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah, I like to, I think that as we talk about this, debt is like, as your Marine, like a M16. In your hands, it's a tool, right? And a weapon, but in the hands of an incompetent is very dangerous, right? And so I think debt is like that also. Our dollar is based on debt. So, you want to learn how to use it and it can accelerate what you're doing. And we had a conversation about, listen, it's really based in commerce, and most people are using it for consumer stuff. They're buying all kinds of, so when you're buying consumer, it's not what we're talking about, but I just want to create a framework. When you're using consumer debt, you're using future earnings as collateral. So you basically spent money you've not yet earned, right? And so that always is going to come back to bite you in the butt. And so what is before we get into it, tell me a little about your background and how you discovered this, and then your philosophy and in which you're empowering business owners to do with this, and and maybe give them a little guardrails around getting this money.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I'm Patrick Pychynski, founder of Stacking Capital. We've been around since 2021. This came around during the pandemic time. Everybody's locked down. I don't know if you remember of an app called Clubhouse. It was just like a voice chat app. Yeah, you needed.
That's what got me to get an iPhone, because you couldn't do it with Android, and it made me go out and get an iPhone. Yes.
Yeah. So at first you needed an iPhone. You needed a special invite. So literally, I was a fly on the wall with a lot of big guys. Ty Lopez, the ex-CEO of like Virgin Atlantic and T-Mobile.
Right.
And in one of those rooms, they started talking about business credit. and it just absolutely blew my mind. I had been doing marketing up until that point. I had my own marketing agency that I started as a freelancer around 2016. But before that, I actually had a metal recycling business that was grossing $2 million in revenue a year at its highest point. And the reason I bring that up is because, like, even having a $2 million a year in revenue business, I knew absolutely anything about business credit. So I actually grew that business pretty much with my own cash flow, like most people do, with my own hard-earned savings that have already been taxed by Uncle Sam, a good 20-25%.
Right.
And it was always just like the struggle of, like, there was when I was in the metal recycling business, it was the right time, right place. Commodities were great. So the money was really, really good. But, with the cash is like money, a lot of money coming in and a lot of money coming out. There was, it was very hard. And I always wondered how, like, my competitors, which were giants, basically, were able to buy like brand new trucks and big scales and things like that. And they did that because of business credit, because of financing. So going back to what you mentioned earlier, like, business credit is simply just a tool that could simply be weaponized against you, or you could use it as a deadly weapon yourself. And I think it's very important to have the education and understanding around how all this works. So that's where we come in. We're not just a course. We're not just a back end funding company that's just going to try to get you these approvals quick and send you on your way. We're actually a one-to-one, funding advisory firm that's going to guide you all the way through to make sure that not only we get you the immediate access to capital that you might have access to because of your credit score, but we're going to make sure you understand it, number one. And number two, we're going to make sure that we set your business up for the actual real business funding, because we actually understand 0% credit stacking is really just the beginning of your business journey, right? It's short-term financing at the end of the day. There's a lot of great benefits to it, like it not reporting on a personal credit report. So you can have that card literally almost maxed out and it's not going to affect your credit score. And, you're typically looking at 1% of the balance to service the minimum debt. So let's just say you're using about $30,000 of that business credit card, doesn't show on your personal credit report. That would cost you about $300 a month to service. So for somebody, that could be a really good way to scale, put more money into marketing, advertising. You can even use these cards for things that don't traditionally take credit cards. We guide you through the process of basically liquidating that credit into cash without having to incur that, that 29.99% cash advance fee.
Right.
So yeah, it could be super deadly business credit. Like, it could work against you, but it could also work in favor of what you're doing. And that's simply what it's meant to do, is leverage the good that you got going already. And going back to that conversation we talked about, I was basically just saying credit itself was originally made for commerce. It was made for arbitrage, because otherwise there's no way to really pay back the interest you're paying back if you have no intention to make a profit on it. Right. So that's where you get into trouble. And that's where the US is pretty much right now as well, too. Right. But yeah, so it goes back to that. I mean, if you're going to be looking at this capital as a form of investing and leveraging a good proof of concept or something that you've got going already, then it just simply becomes a matter of arbitrage, right? Where you're spending $100, the interest on it is costing you $5 and you're selling it for $110. And now you make a $5 profit. It's simply just arbitrage. But that can't happen if you're using credit as a consumer and just buying things you don't want, don't need, or are not going to create an actual ROI for you.
I think that is so critical. I was telling him, I'm on the before we record, I said, look, I'm on this is a concern of mine when I do these, because I'm the one, excuse the expression, clean this shit up on the back end, because I go over people's cash flow and I see the debt or for the course they bought or the deal but they weren't really ready to do a full gut rehab, or they don't really have a business. So now they have all this debt, but they didn't finish, because most people don't finish, right? And so I think that you have to like what you said, to expand on what you already got going on. So you already have a business, you already have cash flow, and if you had access to capital, you could get inventory or something where you could sell it and stay ahead of the debt that you borrowed. Is that kind of what you mean by commerce?
Yeah, and I 100% agree with what you just said too. Like I talk to prospects all the time where they think that they need $200,000 to start
Right.
their idea, whatever they want to do, right? And this is a little bit sort of side note from like funding itself, right? But most people don't need $200,000 to start a business. To tell you the truth, you could actually start a business for free, right?
Right.
But people just go about it or think about it very differently, right? Like for a lot of people, when they think of starting a business, they think of, I need to get my LLC. I need to think of the colors,
Right.
what's my motto, the name, and all that. And that's actually not a business. You're just wasting time, right?
I
So you're
call it
not in
work avoidance, right? You're just thinking of all this stuff that don't mean nothing. Sell something for proof of
exactly.
concept. We do all that other stuff. Yes, thank you so much.
It makes them feel good, makes them feel busy, right? Some
Yeah.
people aren't even aware that they're doing that, right? But you're not in business until you have your first client. So the very first thing that you should be doing, and this is more of what I call like the marketer's approach,
Right.
but basically like you don't need 200K to start a business. You just need to open your mouth, right? Like you don't need to even have the product finished. You just need to pretty much talk to people and see if there's any interest, any signals of interest first for what you're offering, right? And then you could possibly say, if I was able to do this for you in this amount of time, is this something you'd be interested in? And then pretty much start putting those offers in. And then once you get your first client or whatever, you're in business, right? Maybe even do the first ones for free, get a good case study going, all that stuff, right? So all that's to say that like most business owners think they need this like huge pot of like business credit to start what they need. But what they really need is just a really good plan and extreme action behind it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I love that. I love that the marketer approach and that you already had a $2 million business, right? And so you already understand that, coming at it and not just throwing people, into something. So let's take them through a little bit of your framework of your 3 C's framework of how you help people, uh create a good your steps, entry level credit profiles. Like what is the process of let's say I've got a business, I've got, like, I already have a seasoned LLC, we've got revenue, and I want to kind of build my profile. So talk to those people and maybe talk to a startup for a second.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. And before I go into that, I want to sort of make a really clear distinction that is not talked about a lot or or what really makes us different from the other credit stacking companies. So what I'm going to get into at first is basically what we do to access immediate capital. So that's products like 0% interest business credit cards, maybe revenue-based lines of credit and things like that. That is our main mission because, most people, when they contact us, they want funding yesterday, right?
Right.
But most funding companies will sort of just leave you there and sort of not even tell you how to manage it. So a lot of times you're getting a brand new credit card. You want to get the cash out of it. You're maxing it out at 100%. And now you've red flagged that card and they're closing it on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that we guide you after the fact, not to mention, again, this is just short-term financing, 12 to 18 months from now, that'll be over. Yes, we could plan another stack of 0% interest business credit cards, but ultimately you want to make your business bankable because otherwise all you'll ever be able to qualify for is this short-term financing. So our ultimate goal after getting you that first seed round is pretty much setting you up for more bankable longer terms, better rates. If your business is compliant and you can get a business loan or line of credit from the bank, basically we're talking now terms up to 10, 15 years and rates starting at 0% plus prime. So you're looking at like single digit interest rates on either an SBA line of credit or loan for your business at much longer terms and rates.
Okay.
So that's our ultimate goal, right? And the 3 C's is basically just using cash. Like there's things that we can leverage to get funding, and that's either cash, credit, or collateral, right?
Okay.
Just to kind of sum it up and make it very simple. And again, that's kind of what makes us a little bit different from other credit stacking companies as well. And I think this is what's very important as well too, is like what I've noticed in the years of doing this is there could be like a credit repair company. So they're very good at repairing credit and personal credit. And then they might start offering business credit. They know a lot about the personal credit industry, but they don't know a lot about business credit. So they're giving you their expert advice based off of that scope, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I see that too with credit stacking companies. You know, they might be really good at stacking credit, but they don't understand that like there's certain things you can do to sort of like that you can shoot yourself in the foot or end up delaying your progress for getting approved for like either an SBA or those bank term, longer term products, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of like where we're different. We start sort of with the end in mind, but we understand you're looking for access immediately. And a lot of the times, most of the clients that work with us end up actually strengthening their credit profiles as well, because that's actually the first part of our process when going for any kind of funding is we want to look at your personal credit profile first, because that's what most people are going to have in terms of leveraging.
Right.
And that's pretty much what we'll need for 0% interest business credit cards. If you have revenue in the business, there are other products we can look into, such as like loans, lines of credit, equipment loans.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have collateral, then obviously that could also be used to tap into some business funding as well.
Okay. And so how do you, so is there a difference between, I know there's a difference, but explain the difference between your personal credit profile and growing your, how does that equate into growing your business credit profile, and how does one begin to think about doing that, and what's the, how long is it, and that's a good question, but that's, you know, how long does it take, for lack of a better word, you can give me the proper way to ask that.
Yeah, so it's so when we're talking about just the 0% interest business credit cards, you don't necessarily need business revenue. You don't necessarily need tax returns. You don't necessarily need an established business. It could be a new business.
Mm-hmm.
There's even business credit cards you can get just as a sole proprietor. You don't even need to have a formation, right? But when we're looking to unlock the most amount of funding through these cards, the better your business is structured, the more approvals you're going to get. In fact, a lot of the denials happen not so much because of your credit score, but there's other factors that go into approving business credit, such as lender compliance. There's about 20 lender compliance data points that you must meet. So little things, right? Like not having a commercial business address, having a cell phone number instead of an actual business number, not having a website. They have the data on this, right? So they know that people that don't have these things are 70+% more likely to default, right?
Hmm.
So this is why a lot of people like get denied when they're trying to apply for anything else other than a business credit card. And when they do apply for a business credit card, they're approved for maybe low limits. So what we do is basically always start with the personal credit. That's the main thing that we're leveraging, right? So we typically are looking for like a 700+ credit score. If you're looking to start asking for credit and getting business credit cards, you're not going to want too many new recent accounts open in the last year. So no more than 3 accounts open in the last 6 months. That goes for inquiries as well. But you see, inquiries we can remove. New accounts on your profile, we can't.
Okay.
And then you typically don't want any derogatories. And if you are looking at some, you'll want them to be at least a few years old so that the underwriters, the algorithm could pretty much see it's like, oh, okay, this was like a one-off 4 years ago on a student loan, not a credit card, and it doesn't seem to be a pattern. So, but with that alone, just a good credit, we're able to access immediate funding options like 0% interest business credit. The more legs we have to stand on, that's where we're able to unlock even more funding. So if now somebody has a good credit score, not just the score, but a good report, right? Which would mean basically credit cards with good, high, decent limits, because what they're looking for is comparable credit. So if you want a high limit business credit card on a business side, they're going to want to see that you've been able to handle that kind of debt on the personal side. So
Right.
they're going to want to see the limits, and they're going to want to see that you have some credit cards that are at least, 4 years old, basically. So we have strategies in our group to help along every stage of the way. So if we need optimization on the personal side, let's just say even if your credit is good, but your limits are very low, we have strategies. We have something called like a buyer's group method, which allows you to actually increase your limits 3x, 10x in a matter of like 60 to 120 days. Because basically what it does is if you wanted to increase the limits on your cards very quickly, the simplest way to do it is by putting massive spend through it. And there's a few tips and tricks. Like, for example, the IRS allows you to pay your taxes with a credit card. They do charge you a little fee. But the buyer's group method basically allows you to pretty much buy things from platforms like Amazon, Best Buy, and Walmart when they go on sale, and you ship them to a wholesaler. They have their own platform that tracks everything. And they're typically buying things at 1 to 3% above retail. And sometimes you're even using a card that might have 1 to 2% cash back. So sometimes you're netting anywhere between 2 to 6% on these products that you're buying. So it's a little bit of extra cash flow and maybe some travel points. But the main thing we're doing this for is it's allowing us to buy a massive amount of products through our credit card so that the algorithm and that credit card issuer could justify that credit limit increase very quickly. So even if somebody that's not in position, we can put them in position fairly quickly, whether that means credit repair, whether that means strengthening their credit profile by having better limits on that card, on those cards they have reporting. We have strategies for everything. It's just a matter of somebody wanting to do it. We talked earlier about the, credit being a tool. It could be destructive or it could be something very good for you. I've noticed that throughout my time in this business is that the shift has to first happen in the mind, right? Yes. Like you have to be willing to first try something different, try something. If we a lot of us, I understand it. I have parents that are foreigners. My dad escaped communism when he was like 18, really young. So, and then just in general, like maybe the older generation didn't have as much information as we have now. So we didn't grow up like we didn't learn this in school, right? So most people don't know this stuff.
I was a business major, ain't nothing, so.
Exactly, right? I worked at many different places. They never taught it either, right? Yeah. College, went to the Marines. They never taught it, right? So it's understandable, right? But there has to first want to be that change of like, okay, I understand. I don't know what I don't know, and I know there's a better way. That's usually the first step. And then from there, like I said, we have strategies regardless of where anyone is at, because the truth is that in America, especially, everyone gets a second chance with their credit,
right?
And a third and a fourth,
So it's not fatal. Bankruptcy is not fatal. Bad credit score is not fatal. You can turn around with the proper guidance. And I've personally just less than a year, sometimes less than 6 months of just, I would say, correct. So it's two things. I want to say this. I want you to respond to it. Banks loan money to people that don't, at least on paper, don't need it. That's their preference. Is that accurate?
Yeah. I always say the banks could smell you from a mile away when you want money.
Yeah.
And it's very true. Like I just see it. I don't know what it is. It's like I get the same feeling now too. It's not even the profile. It's almost like the person. It's almost going back like to the mindset. I can almost already tell when the algorithm isn't going to like the file. Like there's files that might have a decent score, like they're at a 700 and stuff, but they're just doing way too much. Like they're opening up too many new accounts. They're applying for things everywhere. They might have like non-sufficient funds, a lot of invisible things that might not even show on your primary accounts. There's over 1,000 data secondary credit reporting agencies with data on you, So
that's crazy. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where we can do it right. It's just a matter of being on board with the plan. And it doesn't matter where you're starting from, as long as you got a social security number and you've got a plan and a vision and you're willing to try something different. Everyone always gets a second chance. And then alternatively, our main people we really want to work with are business owners that are established, because I've been there and done that, right? Like I ran a $2 million scrap metal recycling business that relies on a lot of heavy machinery. And I never even took advantage of that. And I can't even, I wouldn't be here if none of that happened today, but it's just, it would have gone a completely different route. That could have easily been like a 7 or 8 figure exit. I could have gotten swallowed up by that competitor that was 3-4 miles down the road. But, it's all good because now I'm here and I'm helping other people sort of avoid the same thing.
So you made me think about the data points. One of the things I've shared, I say this stuff because I want you to feel free to correct me if I say anything dumb. Right. So is that bad credit is a result, right? So here's what I find in working with businesses and consumers. I find that if they have less than ideal credit, a lot of debt, especially consumer debt, and no liquidity, no savings, no business or personal, those are in my mind symptoms of poor cash flow management.
Exactly. Yeah. And like I said, the algorithm just knows it too a lot of the time.
That's what I point. So you have to be a good steward of your resources, because if you are profitable, if you're making money, you're saving money, no NSFs, it doesn't show up on a credit report. But what you're saying, what I'm hearing is it's still showing up somewhere, and they're looking at all of that stuff, and they can tell whether or not you're a good steward of your resources.
Oh yeah. I'm not sure if you've heard of the Small Business Financial Exchange.
No.
So yeah, that's one of the, it's one of the data reporting companies on the business side of things. And they're sort of up and coming and growing. They've partnered with LexisNexis Risk Solutions on the business side.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, they can tell everything from titles, like any sort of professional titles that you have, licenses, homes you've owned, insurance, the balances in your bank accounts. So all that, like I said, is, we're living in an age of where, data is the new gold, right? And I'm still surprised how heavily unregulated that industry is, right? But I feel like, and I'm going to say this here because I haven't said it in a podcast, and I guess it will be for the record. I feel like at some point, and this is sort of off topic, one day, like in the future, we're going to live and be like, I can't believe that you guys lived in a time where you didn't own your data. Like where pretty much like we're using these free platforms, but essentially we're giving them what is essentially liquid gold, all of our data. And then they're literally selling it to all these secondary companies that we're talking about.
All the stuff you think is free, you're paying for it with your data. It's not free. Facebook
You're the product.
Ain't free. You're the product. Right.
Yeah. So I really think there'll come a time when with all this web, this blockchain and Web3 coming out, where it will be like a YouTube platform that sort of rewards you for being a user, for interacting, for participating, and you own a piece of that, a share of that decentralized sort of platform or something like that, right? I really think that will happen one day, but again, that's maybe way into the future. And
that's what you gotta think about it first. Let's talk about a couple things as we build into this. So, was one turn your business credit into a 7-figure growth machine? Is a topic I've heard you talk about, and I'm kind of wanting to understand that.
So repeat that question again.
How to transform your business credit into a 7-figure growth machine?
Yeah, got it. So yeah, so like I was talking about earlier, business credit is simply just leverage, right? So, I'll even go back like to what I was saying earlier. A lot of people think they need this huge amount of capital, but in reality, you really don't, right? Like, I still remember when I first I made the decision to start just scaling up ads with for my offer for my company here. So our monthly ad budget pretty much like 10x'd overnight, but it was because I started to use credit instead of like my own money and all that stuff. And then again, like you said, having a good plan, some good projections as to what will happen is really good before you get into that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's a really simple thing, right? Like any marketer will tell you too. I mean, if you're making even a 3x return on ad spend, which, if once you get stuff dialed in, I mean, that should almost be like the bare minimum you're shooting for when you're running ads, paid ads, because that's not really your true net cost, right? You still got other expenses and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it's like with anything, right? If you find a system that can that where you can put $1 in and get $3 back, would you not put more money into that
Right,
machine?
right,
So it's simply that, and then basically we do it in stages. So ideally, right now we're talking about 0% interest business funding, right? Some
right.
people might not even be ready for that, so we get them ready on the personal credit side. We build that up so that we could get that business credit. Somebody's ready, let's go. Let's go for the 0% interest business funding as well. If they have revenue or equity and they want to use that as leverage, we can get them immediate funding, leveraging one of those C's as well too, right? But once we get you that initial round of funding, we want to make sure that you have an actual plan, right? For example, going back to that, we don't want to get you 500K just because you said you want 500K.
Right, right, exactly.
We want to make sure that you have an actual plan, right? Like, what is this for? Is this for equipment? Is this for your people? How long will this take you for? Like, what is the exact plan here, right? Because, that it's what you need when you're looking for funding, because it's not going to help you to get $1 million all at once and you don't even know what to do with it, right? So this stuff should come in stages, because as you get the capital, you're investing it into what's going to create an ROI, and it's also going to create enterprise value, right? It's going to make your company more valuable and either have people want to invest in you, or just have more revenue coming in the business.
I was at a workshop, and it was people, they were speaking on it, and they were showing you how to get these business loans, but just getting you the money. I guess they got money, which is, I have no problem with that on the back end because they got the loan, but they didn't even have a business yet. They were saying get the loan and then just use the money that they got you to pay the loan back until you got the business. Like, to me, you want to have a purpose of, like, stacking it is like using it, what you're marketing, what's the ROI, and what you're going to do, applying that leverage to it, make money so that you can pay back the money that you borrowed and then scale up from there. Like, it's responsible growth, right? So that
Yeah.
you're not like ahead of your, what do they call it? When you're
Well,
skiing, you're ahead of your skis, you're leaning too far ahead of your
exactly.
skis. Yeah.
Well, what you mentioned there, it like, that's the problem, right? It's like a blanket advice, right? It's like
Yeah.
they're literally telling the whole room, get a personal loan. That's literally what you need. And it's like, maybe you don't need that, right? Because again, going back to that, number one, it's going to be a new account reporting on your personal account. It's going to count against your debt to income ratio as well. And then two, a loan, we're now talking about fixed payments. So again, do you have the plan? Are you getting more than you actually need? Because now you're having to service a monthly
Yes.
payment for something that you might not necessarily need or know what to do with or whatever, right? So so that's one of the things, right? Like, that's just one example of, like, okay, that could work for some people, but
Right.
maybe not. So it's not really, yeah, you can go apply for anything online right now, but the whole idea is to have a plan, know what you're doing, and to make sure you're not shooting yourself in the foot
Right.
a few months down the road. And that's another, we can do loans on the business side too and stuff like that. That's typically more for slightly more mature, established businesses, usually 1 or 2 years old.
Right.
But what I'm trying to say is, another good thing about business credit cards itself, revolving debt, is that, or a line of credit, unlike a loan, is that you're only paying on what you're using. So
Yes, I love those better because you want to, like, use it, do something with it, pay it back with the profits from the thing you did.
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, pretty much, like, a lot of real estate investors, they kind of face a similar thing when they're going for private money. They sort of have to, like, get a new loan, right? And they have to go through that process every single time. A line of credit just stays open. So you use it, you pay down, and it's still there for you to use whenever you want it.
Absolutely. Talk about I don't understand what is the hidden world of banking relationships? Like, what really gets you funded? What is the relationship you're talking about? Like, when I hear that, my dad used to always tell me, like, don't just go to the teller. Like, this is like back in the day, we had, like, private bankers. He would say, this is when I was like a teenager. We had a supermarket growing up here in Philly, and so he knew the people that you could still do loans based on the signature loans or based on the recommendation of the bank, right? It's hard to do that now, but this is then. But he says you got to go in, you got to get to know them. Is that what you mean when you said bank relationship, or in 2025? What does that mean?
Yeah, 100%. So I tell everybody this too. Like I could introduce you to Jamie Dimon, like the CEO of Chase. Uh doesn't matter if you're like a bum on the street, right?
Right.
So you still have to do your part. We still have to clean you up. We still have
Right.
to make sure everything's going to go good for when we present you to that relationship manager, right? But basically, yeah, you have a couple of ways, right? When you're typically applying for any sort of credit, there's like an online application.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing that, you're sort of leaving it to the algorithm to sort of make their decision process. There's, and that could be fine, right? But a lot of the times, if we're going directly through a banking relationship manager, they are going to take the time to listen to your story. And most of the time, it's not going through an algorithm, it's going through an actual human underwriter.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say, because it is common for especially on a business side, an application to either go pending or even denied. The reason why it's more common too is because aside from your personal credit, there's all sort of security compliance measures they're looking. So something as little as like your address mismatching on your Secretary of State letter and your EIN letter could be a reason why you get denied, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, it really boils down to that. It's instead of going through the online algorithm, we're going through an actual human underwriter. And in the event that, let's say, we do get a denial, we still have that human element involved, where the underwriter, based off the conversation and everything that we had with them, they're going to essentially go to bat for you with that underwriter. I'm not sure if you watched the movie Anchorman, but I always say
No, I've seen clips, but no, sure.
Okay.
I
So
have.
there's this really funny saying in there, but basically 70% of the time it works all the time.
Okay.
So basically, when you get a denial, one of the things that we're going to do is basically call reconsideration, or even if it goes pending, because a lot of times, like I said, it's really just maybe they want to verify your identity or they want to confirm some details. So we're always going to call. And again, about 60% of the time, 70% of the time, even maybe 50% of the time, either way, it's worth calling. We get those approval. Like literally just a couple of days ago, I have a client. She applied for a business credit card, M&T, completely denied. I told her to do the same thing. A couple of days later, she sends me an update, 25K approval.
Wow.
So again, like 50% of the time, it works all the time. But again, if she would have not called, she was missing out on 25K right there. And that's just one card. Yeah. So I got it. Like, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a text.
I see it. Okay.
Got
Those
25K
are,
from M&T
from
on
your cell phone.
reconsideration.
Okay. That's
And then-
good.
yeah. And then I now call them and ask, yeah. And she was talking about the Chase card. So we just got her like a 60K approval on Chase as well. But she had 25K already on an older card that ran at a 0%. So with Chase, it's actually pretty unique. We can move her old limits, the 25K that she has that isn't 0% anymore, into that new card, effectively making her new card 85K of new 0% interest for 12 months.
So this really needs to be managed. Like you've got to manage your credit. Like, you got to like pay attention to it. You got to manage your cash flow. It's like all of that stuff. You can't just go willy-nilly. Hey, I need some money. You got to have some revenue. You got to save money. You got to look like banks. I always tell people, banks loan money to people that don't need it. But when you're buying a house, you're doing credit, your financial statement needs to look like they wanted to look.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we do, right? That's all we're simply doing is positioning you to look like a VIP borrower.
Yeah.
And it's very simple. We start with the personal credit optimization. From there, we start to look at business compliance items. Again, you could have a home address, you could have a non-professional email and still get approved for non-bankable or what we call immediate financing options like 0% cards. But we not only want to set you up for the highest limit approvals possible on the 0% side, we also want to start setting you up so that your business can actually get approved for real business funding. And yeah, in terms of accounting, I always tell people like I'm a funding expert, but when it comes to taxes and bookkeeping, like I literally just hired a CFO, right? Like I know nothing about taxes, and he's literally blowing my mind on some of the things in terms of like you're talking about budget allocation, projections, all this stuff, right?
Right.
That's a whole different world. But yes, managing this is super important because again, you got to know where you're at. But at the end of the day, yeah, you got to know where you're at, right? Because
Right.
I had a prospect. I was looking at his file. He's like, his business is making 40K a month, but he's bleeding 70K a month. It's like, there's no way. Like, how's so? Yeah, so and then he's got a on
Like
top of that.
lending you money is like literally, you know, just shuffling the deck chairs around the Titanic. You know, like if you don't, you know what I mean? Because it's like that's just making it pouring gasoline on fire.
I literally just envisioned in my head like just money going straight into like a volcano or something.
Right, right.
It's like,
Funny.
damn. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Which is others, they got other issues, right? Well, how are you wasting money? What are your sales like? Well, you know, there's other stuff that where even if you got the debt, that's just a band-aid because you would, you know, oh, people borrow money to make payroll. Well, you got payroll 2 weeks from now, right? You know, so if you do that, that's just throwing a band-aid. You need to fix the real problem.
exactly.
And I think you have to look at you know, overall with that, which is not your area, but I just did a show on that where a guy was looking at the KPIs of a business. And so it's you have to start there. And then now you're managing the access to other people's money. Whereas if you had access, you could generate new money, but you know, you need to have money coming in. You can't like be broke and hey, I need some money. So there's no
Exactly.
magic to this stuff. People always are looking for like a magic bullet. Oh, I can get zero.
The hack
Great.
or
Not if
something,
you
right?
got a 550 credit score. No, you can't, you know, because your credit is a result of something, right? So if your credit bad, that's a result. Bad decision making. Maybe you got sick, you know, and you lost income, which to me, you had bad financial planning because you only had one way to make money. You had no emergency fund. You had no insurance. You know, it's all kinds. So when I hear that stuff, I hear all the other stuff. Oh, we lost my house. Well, okay, you're doing a pandemic, not the pandemic. What was the first? It's probably you're too young, but the
Oh,
2008.
07?
Yeah,
Yeah.
07, 08. Oh, you know, I was seeing things on PBS like, yeah, we had a machinist making 60 grand a year, bought a $600,000 house because they were doing on an option arm. Well, you can't afford a $600,000 house on 60 grand a year, 50 grand a year. I mean, what are you talking about, right? So
Mhm.
just because you could qualify for it because these junk loans don't mean you should buy it, right? And you should have enough common sense, which is you would think you'd have enough common sense to know that, but people don't. And you're listening
Exactly.
to salespeople. So some of this, like people always want to blame somebody else, you know. And I think that you have to decide to understand money and take control of your wealth and stop just looking for oh he did me wrong. You know, he didn't do nothing. You're grown, right?
Well, yeah, like it starts going back to that mindset thing, right? It's like, yeah, you're at some point you have to sort of look within instead of start, blaming everything
Right.
outside and sort of be like, wait
Let
a minute, I'm
me
the
end with
common
this. Yeah.
denominator.
Tell me, so how you talked about Marine Corps discipline, which is fascinating. How does that enter into teaching people about this stuff, you know, your business disciplines to create success in business? How have you drawn on that to help you win?
Hmm. Man, there's so many ways, right? But one of the popular sayings in the Marines is adapt and overcome. And I think for any business owner, you know that's kind of like the day to day or what you have to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, there's so much. I think not only just the discipline, but the honor, right, in what you do, being proud of what you do, and also wanting sort of to help people.
Yeah.
I do really like the team we've built too. So it's
Mm-hmm.
sort of like our own little corpse or whatever,
Right, right, right.
our own little team there of camaraderie, and they're great guys. So, but yeah, honestly, I think that was a long time ago, but I was wanting to join since I was like 14 years old. And
Wow.
it was, again, no regrets. I'm glad I went young, did a deployment in Iraq, got back. But I think it really, everything that I've done up until this point has helped me to become who I am. And that sometimes meant either working for the government,
Right.
working a W-2 job, or being on my own. And it hasn't been linear. Like it's literally been to where I've worked on my own, I go work for somebody, I go work on my own again, right?
Mm-hmm.
So entrepreneurship is not a straight path, and it's not easy, and it's honestly not even for everyone. I think Instagram has, or just social media in general, has this way of like really sort of downing this 9 to 5 grind and the hustle culture of like being an entrepreneur. But sometimes it's okay to like work for a good company that has their system set up and everything, right? And sometimes it's okay to be an entrepreneur. Maybe go work for somebody that's a startup or starting
Right.
their
Right.
business that you can
You don't
work
need to, I
with.
always say, you don't need to jump out of a perfectly good airplane without a parachute. Right.
Exactly.
You
And that's what
know,
it boils down to, is having a plan. And that's what
yeah.
we're here to do. Like you said, some people just might not know anything. So it's not just about getting them the money, but also helping them, and helping them also before even getting them the money, just helping them understand what they really need it for, right? Like, so
Yeah.
you don't need 200K. You really need 50K to start getting an ROI on this money, right?
Yeah. I'm
So
glad to
yeah.
hear you say that you help them think through that, because it's like that's major. Like you don't need to hurt yourself. And sometimes having the job is, I always say, Jim Rohn says, wages make you a living, profits make you a fortune, right? So you can earn your living by day, work on your profits in the morning, on your lunch break, after work, on the weekend. Now you actually look more favorable to a bank because you got
Exactly. I
that,
was about to say
you know what I mean?
that.
So you don't need to
Yeah.
jump, let's build this up, build some revenue, stack some capital, stack some savings, stack some liquidity so that you
Stack
can
some
weather
wins.
storm. Most
Mhm.
business owners I talk to, Patrick, are just way too illiquid that they can't survive a month with no cash
Mhm.
flow. And so listen, I want you to tell them, if they want to, talk to you or figure out what you got going on, how can they reach you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I've made it really easy. So one of the things that we've spent a lot of time and resources on over the last year was
Mm-hmm.
software. So if you go to stackingsuccess.com, that's going to allow them to grab a free pre-qualification report. So
Mm-hmm.
it is a bit cumbersome in that they ask you 20 questions. So you're going to go through a list of 20 questions, personal and business. But by
Mm-hmm.
the end of that, we're going to be able to create a 2 to 3 page report on how much funding they might be able to access right now and what they might need to do to their personal credit profile to optimize it to unlock more. And I'd also like to extend a free funding strategy call to anybody who fills that out. So we'd be more than happy to go over their options and see what they may qualify for now. No cost, no obligation, just as a nice thank you to your listeners today.
I would appreciate it. That we need to get some money. We need some money. Just don't be done with it, but we'll get you in a position to do some good things with it, and kind of take advantage of there's like, I don't care if you're I always tell you your candidate won or didn't win, there's always opportunities that will be created, and you've got to be acknowledgeable, be bold, and take advantage of those opportunities to win, because there's all you can win. Jim Rohn says, I've been saying this a lot lately, but this is how I think, is like the winds of adversity blow on us all, but the difference is how you set the sail, you know. And I think between the two of us, we're trying to help people learn to set a better sail, because that's all you can control is how you respond to stimuli, right?
Well
How
said.
to
Yeah,
adapt
100%.
adapt and overcome, right?
Yes, sir.
Adapt and
Yep, that's
overcome.
it.
All right.
Adapting.
So
Yes, sir.
Patrick, thank you so much for joining us on the Practical Wealth Show. So you listened to why most business funding advice is dead wrong and what actually works. So now you see that it's relationships, it's stacking, it's a bunch of stuff. There's not a magic bullet. There's a process, and Patrick and his team at Stacking Capital can guide you through that to build a solid, sustainable business.
Exactly.
All right. My brother.
StackingSuccess.com. They can grab
Yep.
their free report.
Get your free report, and we'll put those in the show notes, and follow him, get some help. You need guidance because you might, know what you know, but you don't know everything, especially when you come to business credit. A lot of you are out of your realm. And so get some, especially if they're going to offer it complimentary, get some data, and with data, you can make better decisions.
100%.
All right.
Thank you, Curtis, so much.
Yes, thank you, and for your time today, and sharing with our listeners. And guys, go out there and make it a fantastic and a profitable day. Do you know where your money's going every month? Most people don't, and that's costing you big time. At Practical Wealth, we help you take control of your cash flow with a simple mapping system. We call it telling your money where to go instead of asking where it went. It's a simple system that shows you exactly how to track, manage, redirect dollars towards building wealth, paying down debt, finding hidden money, and having a clear plan to achieve your financial goals. With cash flow mapping, you're in charge, not the other way around. Ready to get started? Visit practicalwealthsolutions.com or go to the link below. Learn how the cash flow mapping can transform your finances today.